podcast from the grassroots, connecting people and sharing ideas. Hello and welcome back to Duran ASEAN. This is Gowri.
And you're still with Grace.
And this is our ABC Focus, actually, for our Monday morning, where we focus on matters concerning ASEAN.
So what are we focusing on today?
Today we are, of course, focusing on the ASEAN summit that happened last week. And it's something that is very, very important to this region because Malaysia is especially taking over from Myanmar as the chairman of the ASEAN summit. And it was a very long-awaited event that happened, and a lot of issues were addressed, were highlighted, were talked about, and that's why we are here today. So we are going to enlighten our listeners a little bit.
Let's give a little bit a history of this ASEAN summit that's going on right now. Well, it was set up in 1967 in Bangkok by Thailand, of course, Indonesia, Malaysia, the Philippines, and Singapore. So since then, it's been joined by Brunei, Laos, Vietnam, Myanmar, and Cambodia. So all these 10 member countries have come together to aim to promote collaboration and cooperation among member states, as well as to advance the interest of the region as a whole, including economic and trade growth as well. And in fact, the ASEAN Summit was an annual affair until 2009, and then when the leaders began to meeting twice a year, the member countries take turns every year to chair the two meetings. And 2015, it'll be Malaysia, our turn, and the next year. And during the year-end meeting, the country chair also hosts the East Asia Summit, which is the forum attended by ASEAN, and also leaders of China, India, Australia, New Zealand, South Korea, Japan, Russia, and United States.
And of course, the chairman this year was Myanmar, who took over for the first time, actually, after joining ASEAN in the last 17 years. And back then, they weren't able to do it because of all their problems with the military rule, and things were too strict, too difficult. But after making some changes, political changes, economic reforms, administrative reforms especially, which started in 2011. So they have finally managed to play a more active role now in international affairs and also in terms of ASEAN, so to speak. And also their foreign policies have changed, amended by the 2008 constitution. And Myanmar can now start implementing all their policies and carry out the responsibility of their ASEAN chair in accordance with Article 31 and 32 of the ASEAN Charter.
That's correct. And also, just to enlighten and highlight why this year's summit, 2014 ASEAN Summit in Myanmar, is so important. This summit is quite notable because it's the first time Myanmar is chairing the summit, like what you mentioned, Gowri, and that the group has called a momentous occasion. It is agreed to forego its turn to chair in 2006 as some members feared the country, which was actually under the military rule. And then it could actually damage ASEAN's standing if it was chosen to do so. And then elections in November 2010 replaced military rule with the military-backed civilian government. And since then, the reform process has been underway. But the critics always say the political reforms have installed in the recent months only. And after that, UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, who has attended this summit, he also expressed his concern about discrimination against the Rohingya minority, which we actually did news commentary on these issues, how people were against him overusing of this term Rohingya. And also at this summit, ASEAN discussed anti-Ebola measures and also prevention of ASEAN citizens from aiding the Islamic State as well.
And also to give a little bit more history actually to Myanmar, where Yangon is of course the capital city and kind of like the gateway to Myanmar. And this city was founded in 1755, which is a very long time ago. And they have their own famous buildings and all. But I've never been to Myanmar though. I would definitely love to go there and experience for myself how things really work over there, and also to see the beautiful landmarks, the people, to try the food and all that. But let's go back to our ASEAN summit. Of course, there are various issues that we are going to talk about, and one of it is the let's go through their issues first. Well, of course, they talked about human rights. They addressed the maritime issue, which is being faced by China, Vietnam, Philippines. And then there was also, of course, the economic and business aspect about the AEC, and also about security, which we touched a bit this morning in terms of coastal security. So to maybe we talk about human rights first, because that is something that has been ongoing for a very long time. Of course, like we mentioned, the Rohingya community, although we're technically not allowed to say that word anymore because it's not politically correct. We're supposed to refer to them as Bengalis or whatever it is that is allowed by the government. But to talk about the human rights, actually, a lot of non-governmental organizations have stepped in and criticized what the government is doing, and there's been also a call for standard citizenship where people can actually decide what they want to be called, and especially with the Rohingya communities, of course, they do not want to be known as Bengalis because it doesn't resonate with their identity and who they really are.
And in fact, those people, they flee from their country, Myanmar, to majority of them, they do reside in Malaysia itself.
And Thailand as well.
Thailand, yes. And that they are not still acknowledged or recognized as citizens from Myanmar. And then the lifestyle and how they carry on with their families and their own society is pretty poor and very low at the society level.
And also, a lot of this international human rights clinic is not calling for persecution, but they said that it's really up to the people of Myanmar to start a proper dialogue, a proper conversation about these issues. But of course, Barack Obama, when he made multiple visits to Myanmar to meet the opposition leader Aung San Suu Kyi, and also to meet members of the young Southeast Asian leaders, mainly to address this human rights issue in Myanmar. And it's apart from that, without addressing the military reform, it's really hard for the country to go through any reform, because we know that they are having an elections next year, which is very, very important. The most important elections actually in the history of Myanmar, because it's supposed to be the election where they transit from military rule to a more democratic country. But the plight of the Rohingya is still there, it's still not being addressed, and a lot of people are outraged about it, of course, but being outraged about it alone is not enough. You know, what are the steps that's actually being taken to address this matter?
And also, not only the issues regarding Rohingya community, Myanmar is in fact stepping into this diplomatic spotlight, the largest gathering of world leaders it has never ever seen. And there will be much focus on the maritime tensions. But aside from that, there will be talks on the larger economic integration as well, and then the plans to be one economic community by 2015. So all the leaders, they hope to come up with a more formalized statements by the end towards the summit decision.
Right, and one of the things that ASEAN is looking out for is also the rise of China, because China is, of course, a very powerful country, and also in terms of its geopolitical impact on the region is going to be very, how do I say this, very impactful. And the best test for China's behavior is to see how they go about solving their maritime disputes with several ASEAN countries. So.
Actually, these issues have been going on for some time already, and this is one of the major issues that needed to be discussed at the summit, because this relationship between the several ASEAN members and China over this territory in the South China Sea, and also the greater economic integration ahead of Southeast ASEAN Trade Union that is mooted for 2015. At the end of this ASEAN summit, right, the leaders will have to release the statement expressing, because they are concerned about the recent development in the South China Sea, which have increased the tension in the area, and also tensions between the countries itself. And the tensions in the seas have soared this year, 2014, with Vietnam, Philippines, and then they are enraged by the series of maneuvers by regional superpower, which is China, in the waters claimed by them.
Yes, and ASEAN is also actually looking at applying two strategies simultaneously, an ally with both the US and China. Because if they only ally with US, that will make China feel threatened, because China is actually the country in this region, is a big, powerful country, and it's kind of like the monster of the region, and we do not want to provoke it and make it aggressive. And although the US, of course, might be able to provide conflict, we still don't want to take that risk, because China is a lot more closer to ASEAN, and if we were to foster a good relationship and we had to choose between US and China, the wise move is, of course, to go with China in this case. And also, allying with China only will neglect the fact that US is still the greatest power in the world, undeniably, and there is no guarantee that China's economic will actually last over the long term. And so we are going for a dual strategy here, where we are allying with both US and China, and to help us in ways that one of the countries can't.
All right. And also another issues that we can talk about is the rise of Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant, and the countering the Ebola epidemic. They are also needed to be discussed at this summit in Myanmar. And this Southeast Asian leaders, including from Muslim majority Indonesia and Malaysia, they're all committed to all necessary measures to prevent fighters traveling from ASEAN member states to join terrorist groups. And then, in fact, these Islamic states, they have influenced a lot to Southeast Asia countries, especially Malaysia, Indonesia, as well as the regions around there. And ASEAN leaders are due to meet this Chinese premier during this East Asia summit, which is to discuss about these matters.
And speaking of security, of course, like you mentioned, the ISIS is making an impact here in Southeast Asia. We have people from China, from Philippines, from Malaysia, from Indonesia, even from Singapore. They have managed to recruit people to go over and join in their agenda, and people actually bought the idea of whatever they wanted to sell, and this has created a sense of panic in our region, and it's also something that we have to be very wary about, because we do not want such an extreme ideology. Of course, it's not in accordance to what we have here in Southeast Asia, and we do not want that extreme ideology to spread further here and influence more people to go over. None of the countries in Southeast Asia or even around the world actually support what ISIS is doing, and the countries should actually come together and address this more seriously. And also to talk about Narendra Modi for a bit in Myanmar, where we have 5 things to know about the ASEAN Summit 2014. So I think the first couple of ones that you already mentioned earlier about how it was formed and everything. But this summit ASEAN is known for its economic stability and GDP growth. And had ASEAN been a separate entity with its stable GDP, it would actually be the sixth largest economy in the world. So that's what we're actually striving for with the ASEAN Economic Community, where we are having a regional economic integration by 2015, where all of the countries are going to come together and be a single market to go from there in terms of economic development, a fully integrated region, and to turn into a more global economy.
And also, just to highlight who actually attended this summit the other day, is there are members who attended, and then those are from U.S. President Barack Obama, Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, Australian Prime Minister Tony Abbott, Singapore Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong, and the Philippines on Benigno Aquino III, among other also ASEAN leaders of state. And it was really a very interesting summit, and also not to forget all these guests include in the Chinese Premier Li Keqiang, Russian Prime Minister Dmitry Medvedev, Korean President Park Geun-hye, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, and the United Nations Secretary General Ban Ki-moon.
Right, and that is quite a lot of people who have come together to actually discuss about the issues that is happening around ASEAN.
And also not to forget our Indonesian new president, Joko Widodo.
Right, so this ASEAN summit also, there have been some comments, some articles on the internet saying that, what's the point of you guys having this summit every year and just getting together and talking? Is there really a concrete solution to the problems in the end? Do they
it's not that simple.
Definitely not simple at all, because it involves so many different countries that came together. And even if you were to just take two different countries, it's not easy for two parties to come to find a common ground and to come up with a solution.
That's correct, because two different countries, like you mentioned, they will have two different government system, political system, and they will have two different economic states and the social states. The structures are all different from from each other, and to be able to meet the common ground, they really need to understand each other to be able to see what they can come up with.
And also, for them to come together, of course, it's definitely a good sign for our region. It's something that's very positive, or at least we hope it is. And Malaysia will be hosting this next year, and we'll see how that one pans out. And also, apart from the issues about the AEC, let's go to Philippines for a bit, where their main concern there is actually to increase connectivity, also protection for migrant workers, and to promote women's and children's rights, and for SMEs as well. And the President Barack Obama will actually be visiting the Filipino community in Myanmar, which is a host to about 860 Filipinos. And he will also grace the launch of the ASEAN Institute of Green Economy. That's one more thing that's being highlighted here, hosted by Myanmar's president for all ASEAN leaders. Because when it comes to a green economy, we were discussing last week about the bicycle issue in the region, and we are still not quite there yet in terms of green economy, in terms of protecting the environment. There's
Definitely
still a lot of
challenge.
Open burning that's happening here.
And also, but with this 10 members gathering, and also plus other Asian countries, it will definitely be expanded, the ASEAN summit itself, and it will pave the way for the new synergy, maximizing the cooperation potential for growth and entire region. And that's pretty positive, and that's what they're aiming for. And then, but however, we cannot also ignore all those concerns and also the cautions that were expressed during the summit. Because in the face of the greater ASEAN, which comprises countries at the different levels of economic that I mentioned before, and as well as technological development, because when you think about this technological development status from different countries, some countries are still chasing after, and some countries are really going ahead with their development. So with this, and also with the different cultures and historical backgrounds, of course, because historical backgrounds actually do tell and portray the political and the government status from the country. And then there emerges and a need on how to keep those differences from slowing down the ASEAN growth pace, and also from creating difficulties for those countries of lower levels of development.
And actually, to really look at the summit, it seems that the thing that was highlighted the most was actually the South China Sea dispute.
Definitely.
That was the hottest topic that was discussed. And also the recent escalation has, of course, prompted all parties to be more careful, to be more wary of China. And they are also going to look at how China is going to address this. But of course, China has actually agreed to have a dialogue with the Vietnam's party and also with the Philippines. But
obviously, this issue is a hot topic, and that there's this relationship between China and ASEAN countries. I mean, especially regarding this territorial claims in the South China Sea, it's ongoing hot topic. You see, until we see an improvement between the relationship between China and the ASEAN region.
And another thing that we kind of forgot to talk about was actually the crisis in Thailand, which is also worrying to a lot of parties. Because they removed their prime minister and they are now under military rule. And of course, the people in Thailand are not happy about that. They do not want to go back to military rule. They want to move forward. They want to go for democracy. And they've been waiting for an election to happen, and that hasn't happened as well. And this has also become a worrying issue in Southeast Asia. And we also know that, there was a writer who wrote about the kingdom that's happening in Thailand, and that book was also banned. And that's not a very positive sign for ASEAN when we are trying to move forward and trying to get all the countries to come together. But then we still have all these issues to deal with.
Definitely, the reality is a bit more painful to deal with, because meanwhile, the host Myanmar as the 25th ASEAN Summit is coming close, and then the DFA said that the Myanmar's choice of theme also manifests its commitment to contribute to the realization of political, cohesive, economical integrated, socially responsible, and the people-centered community. But like I mentioned before, the reality is it's not so rosy and also very painful to look at.
And so just to summarize a little bit, we have issues that was highlighted in the last summit regarding economy, regarding security issues, regarding human rights issues in Myanmar. And also, of course, in terms of democracy, where we actually want all the countries in ASEAN to have a democratic system, especially in Myanmar. They are very, very hopeful next year in the elections that the democracy is going to happen.
Yeah, but then all those issues that have been going around, other than the Southeast China Sea issues, all those international issues they are supposed to be discussed or at this summit includes Ebola outbreak, security threat of Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, and also climate change, and also conflict in Ukraine. Those issues are not to be ignored as well.
So that's all the time that we have for our ABC Focus. Do leave your comments, any feedback on our Facebook page. You can also tweet us at Durian ASEAN.
And then we will keep you updated with more ASEAN matters and issues. And then please don't forget to download our TuneIn app again and find us at Durian ASEAN.